Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. So excited to be back with you all for this month's webinar. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Melanie Naranjo. I'm the CPO at Ethena. We do compliance training, everything from harassment prevention to cybersecurity, hotline, and case management. And one of the things that we love doing is bringing together people communities, because being in the compliance space, we know that a lot of dramatic stuff happens, and sometimes you need someone to confide in, you need a safe space to vent, you just need to make new friends to get other ideas about how to talk to your leadership team when they're not listening, which will come up today, I promise. And so we're really excited to have everyone on this call today. I am so excited to be here today with Pamela Brown, who is VP of People and Culture at Crunch Fitness. Pamela, we met at, I believe, a Yankees baseball game, right?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
We
Oh,
absolutely did. I think over a year ago.
over a year ago, I think if I remember correctly, your husband and your son was there, and I
Yeah.
felt so cool. I like gave him a fist pump. I was like, I'm young, I'm hip, I'm cool. And he was like, Who is this? Who's this old lady? I don't know her. Um, Pam, tell us a little bit more about yourself before we jump into the discussion today. Who is the audience meeting?
Oh, thank you so much. So, well, as you've said, I'm a wife and mother of two. Although we only took my son to the baseball game, which my daughter was totally fine with. My kids are 20 and 18, and I have had a career. This will date me, but it spans 3 decades in HR. And within HR leadership spans over 2 decades. So so my background includes serving financial services companies, insurance companies, and 2 years ago, I made a huge shift and switched over to fitness. So that's a little bit about my career.
Switched over to fitness and got a personal trainer, and now I'm like, I need to get a personal trainer so I can get on top of it. So good on you, Pam. And also shout out to Pam and Crunch Fitness's new office space that Pam is currently in. Isn't it so beautiful? I love it. All We are gathered here today to talk about building effective leadership teams and tackling some of the common challenges that tend to come up. And one of the things that I like to do is make sure that our webinars are interactive and engaging so that we're talking to you, not at you. And so please note that if you are new, one of the things that we like to do is I will ask pulse check questions in the comments. I will ask you to respond in your comments, score one to five. If you do not want to be called on, I don't want that to be a deterrent to your participation. So make sure when you respond that you put an asterisk next to your number response. And that will be my cue not to call on you because, you're doing the dishes, you're an introvert and don't want to be called on, or, quite frankly, you're here to listen. You're here to listen, not talk, and that's fine too. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Agenda for today, we're going to be talking through how to spot leadership problems. As I mentioned, how to handle some of those issues, getting buy-in, which is a constant struggle in the HR world. We'll do a little quick Athena spotlight just for anyone who's new here, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So let's kick it off with my favorite pulse check question. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being super agree, 1 being Melanie, what are you talking about? My leadership team is perfect. How much do you agree with this? 5, my team's perfect. They've never made any mistakes. 1 being, who gave these fools these jobs? Who gave these fools these jobs?
I see a
Okay.
lot of ones and
Okay.
twos.
What'd you say, Pam?
I said I'm seeing a lot of ones and twos.
See, okay, let's talk about that before we call on people. And I love that the people with ones and twos are like, don't call on me, asterisk. Don't worry, we'll never out anyone or their company. I'm curious, Pam, as you're seeing these answers, what is going through your mind? Are you surprised? Are you like, makes sense? Are you just curious? Like, what are you thinking?
I'm not surprised at all, actually. In my introduction, I should have also mentioned I'm an adjunct that teaches leadership at NYU. And in my classrooms with master's degree students who often have work experience, they're like, these concepts are so great. This is not happening at my organization. So the ones and twos are actually not a surprise at all.
Look at that. I had no idea about that, Pam, by the way. Like, what? Oh, okay. Let's call on one person in the audience who was brave enough not to put, or maybe just forgetful enough not to put an asterisk next to their response. Jedediah, Jedida, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Please help me, Jedida. Let me know how to pronounce your name. And then you gave a one. You were full force. You were like, nope. If you would be so bold, please tell me a little bit more about what's going through your mind and what drove your response.
Sure. Hi, my name is pronounced Jadida, and
Idita, thank you.
thank you for asking. So I just feel that, a lot of times in my organization, like leadership is they're very focused on product and tend to forget, that people need to be managed properly, people need direction, people need feedback, and it's lacking. So yeah, that's why I said a one.
Interesting, Jadita. Can I ask a follow-up question? And also, while I'm asking in the comments, please put a +1 if you agree that you have the same experience. You have leadership team members who just forget about the employees. They're so focused on the business, they forget about the employees that are actually driving the business forward. Okay, so Jadita, I hope you can see that you are not
I
alone.
see it.
My question to you here is, um, and I mean this in the best way possible, like, so what? Like, so what? Like, why does it matter? Like, what is the impact of leadership team members not being effective or forgetting about their employees in favor of the business? Like, why is that a problem?
Good question. So, well, if people don't know, for example, if I'm doing a bad job or I'm doing a good job, but no one is recognizing it, then I don't feel appreciated. And I'm going to start looking for new employment elsewhere. I'll take my talents somewhere else. Or if, things are happening and no one is addressing it, the storm is brewing and it's just going to get worse until it just eventually blows over. And now we have a bigger problem that could have been addressed when it was something small. So I think that, yeah, it's important to run the business and focus on the product, etc. But the people are important too. You can't have a business without the people.
Love that. Very well said, Jadita. I don't know if you saw, but there were applause emojis going through.
Yeah.
Yes, look at that. Love for Jadita. Yeah, Jadita, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. Really
No
appreciate
problem.
it. All right, so Pam, I'm gonna bring it over to you. Before I ask my kickoff question, any like what's going through your mind hearing and seeing in the comments some of what people are thinking in response to what was intentionally sort of a divisive question here.
I think that a lot of times companies and leadership lose sight that the people are their most important asset and that those are the people that are driving the business forward. And in the world of fitness, but you can say in whatever business you're in, the for fitness, the member experience is never going to exceed the team member experience. So if we lose sight of that, then we're actually impacting our own bottom line.
Oh, love that. Okay, so we're going to get into some specifics here. We've talked about some of the problem areas that we see in leadership teams that are ineffective and the ripple effect that it can have on not just our employees, but the bottom line. I'm curious to know then what's the opposite? What are the key characteristics of an effective leadership team to you, Pam?
To me, one of my favorite books is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And for me, it always comes back to that, where if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's also a hierarchy of teams. So it starts with trust as the foundation. If you don't have trust, you're not going to get to the next level. So if the five dysfunctions is about dysfunctions, but you can flip it on its head and say the five best practices of a team start with trust. Once you have built trust, feedback isn't so hard to give and receive. Because if I'm giving hard feedback to someone on my team, but I've already built that level of trust, then it's not so hard for them to hear because they already know I'm coming from a place of wanting their growth and wanting what's best for them. Then after trust comes productive conflict. And I tell my team all the time, I may not love it when you challenge my ideas in the moment, but I always circle back and thank them because a lot of times they can save me from myself. And if you haven't created a place with trust and safety, then your team isn't going to come and tell you your hair is on fire. You got to put that out. And I want a team that does that.
I love that so much. I will say one of my favorite activities that we've ever done as a leadership team at Athena is we we all went home and we determined like what is our conflict style, and then we talked about it and why.
Love
Um,
that.
and I'll give an example of why this was so helpful to me and some of my partners. There was someone that I was understandably frustrating on the team, and it's because my conflict style is problem solver, which sounds like a good thing, but can actually be problematic because what happens is I'm so focused on the question that I forget about how I'm making or on solving the problem that I forget about how I'm making the person feel. And so I ask question after question after question, and it comes across as an interrogation. And almost sometimes I learned the impact is that people can feel like I'm just trying to prove them wrong with my questions, as opposed to actually being curious about their answer. And so I'm not focusing on like, wait, hang on a second, like I'm making that person feel overwhelmed. I'm not taking into consideration that there's an emotional component and we need to step back before we can solve, the business problem. Anyway, that was so helpful because then it was like, oh, Melanie's not coming from a place of bad intent, but now I can call it out and be like, Melanie, you're doing the problem solver thing. And I can be like, oh, shoot, thank you for calling it out. Pam, you look like you wanted to say something.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm thinking that you've put a couple of concepts into trust and productive conflict, which are you have to have a high emotional intelligence and pay attention to how you're making other people feel. And one of the things I like to do when I'm asking a lot of questions
Yeah.
is, especially with teams that maybe don't work with me every day and I haven't built that trust with already, I like to say, I'm seeking to understand, and call out my intent in case they don't know.
I love that so much, being clear on the intent, right? Like, I want to make sure I'm partnering with you effectively. I want to make sure that, like, I know you care about the success of this team, and so do I. And so I want to make sure that together we are doing that. That's why I'm having this tough conversation, right? Like, I think it just does so much to sort of remove those barriers, defensiveness, all that stuff. Pam, I want to give you space in case I interrupted you. Were you going to go through, like, were you going to share the full five, or
So
was it, yeah,
yeah,
those were
I'm
just,
happy to share the full five, and you didn't interrupt me at all. So we started with trust, productive conflict. There is collaboration that happens in the middle, uh, collaboration and communication, accountability, and then finally results at the very tip of the pyramid. And I have worked with teams before in my prior life where we had the results, but we didn't have the first four building blocks that got to results. What that means to me is either the team could be doing that much more, a multiple of the revenue they're already bringing in, or the team is about to crumble. So it's still a warning sign, even if the results aren't there, if you don't have the other four levels.
love. Okay. So I want to dig in here because I think it's one thing to know, like, okay, this is what it looks like. It's another to know, like, okay, I know that, but it's not happening. Like, nice theory, but like, how do I make it happen? And by the way, somebody in the comments asked, how do you determine your conflict style? Truly, you can just like Google it. There are like worksheets that you can do to like explore the different conflict styles and how to determine which one you are. And sometimes it's better to ask what people think you are than what you think you are because the answers might be different. So Pam, I want to dig in here. According to a 2023 Gallup article, only 20% of US employees strongly agree that they trust their leadership, the leadership of their organization, which you mentioned trust is key. Why, if so many, because I've heard people talk about trust, transparency, all those things, right? And yet it continues to be a problem. Why do you think so many companies struggle to build effective leadership teams and build things like trust across the company?
I can speak to the organization I came with prior to Crunch.
Yeah.
They liked to promote a lot of, if you were a great salesperson, that meant you were going to get to lead a P&L and lead 100 plus people
Okay.
because we're a great salesperson. Being a great salesperson doesn't equal being a great leader of people. They're not, it doesn't mean you're not a great leader of people, but it doesn't mean you have that skill set. So if you're not also investing in the development of your
Mhm.
people, they might not know how to lead people. Even when I look back on the first time I ever managed people, I definitely had a lot of opportunities. And I'm lucky enough to still be in touch with one of the first people that I managed, and I mentored her. And there are some things I definitely did right. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be in touch after all these years. She
Yeah.
herself is an HR executive now, but she reminded me that I used to, if she came to me without a solution, I used to say, why don't you come back when you have some solutions to offer? If she brought me a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would definitely handle that differently today in a much more empathetic way.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. My first time managing, what a dud. What a dud. I remember I was so like I'm a person that's so hungry for feedback. I thought like I feedback to the point where it was like overwhelming and nitpicky and it wasn't focused on the big picture. And I remember it just came across as demoralizing because I forgot to balance it with like positive feedback and also like, hey, I know that you can do this and here's why I'm excited to share it with you. Like all like just fell short in all those things. I'm curious to know, I have a point, I have an opinion, and I'd be curious to get your take on this. I think that something we don't talk about enough is that leadership teams often, to your point, don't get the training and support that they need, but also leadership teams are deeply, deeply insecure. And in my opinion, are like so scared of looking dumb or making a mistake or doing the wrong thing. And I think that this leads leadership teams to start fighting with each other instead of being curious or get defensive when someone shoots down an idea because they are just so scared of like, you didn't like my idea. Does that mean I'm bad at my job? I'm a bad leader. Don't disagree with me. What do you, am I being like, maybe, am I giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt? Maybe that's like too generous a perspective.
No, I think that you're spot on. And I saw in the comments, someone said imposter syndrome is real. So
Yeah.
people with their own insecurities, if they feel like they haven't earned their seat at the table, I think that I also, Crunch is such a great place to work where we do have the psychological safety. But if somebody gives me feedback, sometimes I even need to remind myself their intent is good.
Yeah.
Their intent is we're in this together. And I try to remember that. And I try to, especially when I'm working with new people, say that out loud. We're in this together. So
Yeah.
seeking to understand, why did we decide X, Y, or Z? And always kind of prefacing it with helping make sure they know that I'm not questioning whether they should have their seat at the table.
So, okay, first of all, I love some of the specific phrases that you're offering because I think that just helps orient people. It's one thing to say, like, build trust with someone. It's another to say, hey, make these statements before you give constructive feedback so that they will be more open and less defensive. I wanted to give with some specific examples here. I would love to know about a time that you were partnering with a leadership team that was struggling. Maybe you and the team were having friction. Maybe the team was not partnering together effectively. Tell me about the situation, set the stage, and then tell me about the impact that was having. And then we'll circle back and say, okay, so what did you do what did you do about it?
So definitely have a great one where the leader, the president of the company, was winding down his career. It was well known. He had said it over a period of years that this specific year would be his last. And there were different people vying for his job. So,
Okay, cue the
yeah.
politics. I'm ready.
So yes, so key in the politics is exactly right, where people are putting their own individual needs ahead of the team needs. And you can't split the baby. You have to really put the company and team at the forefront if you're leading the way forward. And I was struggling as the HR person to support the three different people that were vying for the same job. And I actually had a coach share some advice that I want to impart on you, which was, I had said, how is it that the current leader, I can give him the answer and he loves the answer? But when I'm talking to the three people that are coming up for the job, some of them like the way I work, some of them don't. And it's just a completely different experience. And I'm always the same person. And the coach helped me see that you can't always be the same person. You have to adjust your own, you don't need to change who you are fundamentally, but you can adjust your style to the person's work style. So what I ended up realizing, first I asked everyone for feedback, and I asked them, oh, a new year is upon us, or we've just started a new year, or as we're in the middle of the year. Frame it however you need to frame it. I'd like to know, what would you like me to start, stop, continue, or change? And I got some really interesting feedback. I had one leader who didn't want to give me feedback, even though I gave them the push. And I had to, so they said, everything's great, you're great. And so I actually had to take it a step further to say, actually, I'm hearing that maybe I get ahead of the business sometimes, and I'm confused by that, and I don't want to do that. So help me understand why I'm hearing that. And so it kind of brought to his attention that I'm aware that things aren't as smooth as he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a specific reason that he felt that way. He shared the specific reason, which in my case had to do with the intern program. And I was doing what I had always done in moving it forward. But this leader, and it made perfect sense when he said it, had been an intern. So of course that's important to him, and he wants to weigh in and lead the strategy. So that was an important lesson for me.
I'm curious, we're talking about a leadership team, right? And you would think that this leadership team has total confidence and has no fear in speaking up, and they'll speak their mind. And yet you really had to sort of tease it out of them. I'm curious, what's your perspective on why it was so hard for them to just say the thing? Why did you have to solicit it? And then why, on top of that, did you have to really pull teeth on this one?
So he actually told me, so I have the answer in this case. Sometimes we're guessing what the answer is, but he actually told me. He said, he thanked me for asking the questions and kind of pulling it out of him, because now I can make it better.
Yeah.
And he said the reason that he didn't just offer it up in the first place is because I didn't report to him. And so he wasn't sure if he was really invited to give me that feedback, even though I had asked for it.
Okay, I think that's so powerful because I think cross-functional feedback, peer feedback, is the hardest feedback to give. At Ethena, we have mandated manager direct report feedback. Every other week, you're required to give each other feedback. Done. Easy peasy. You have a one-on-one with your manager. Why not? But you can't schedule a one-on-one with every single person that you partner with. And it is hard to say, hey, can I give you some feedback unsolicited? I will share, this came up at Athena as well across the leadership team, and it did lead to some issues where, something was happening and somebody on the other team, somebody else on the leadership team didn't know that this thing was happening, and then it would lead to some issues, some friction. Somebody didn't know that there was an issue going on. I will share for anyone who's curious in the comments a solution that we did that's been working for us really well, which is we just did we implemented a bi-weekly progress to goals check. And what it is just like async. Every person on the leadership team has to answer 3 questions, which is like, give me a status update on your progress to goals. Like, where are you in what in the process? 2, what's working really well on your team? And 3, what's blocking you? Like, what is holding you back? And that third question has helped us so much. And by the way, we'll share the template afterwards if anybody wants, because there's like a whole thing and we rotate questions. But that third question in particular has been so helpful in surfacing issues like, hey, I'm really struggling because we're not building the pipeline needed to like close this, to hit our quota. Or like, hey, our sales team is really frustrated right now because Melanie just rolled out this training at the end of the quarter when we're trying to close deals. And that was like not helpful, right? And so then I'm very easily able to come in and say like, my bad, very silly mistake. I've now learned about, a different need on the business. And also that deadline is flexible. Let's absolutely move it out. And we don't need to be sitting here with this unspoken feedback, this friction, this, HR is getting on my nerves. Product team isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Just speak up, say the thing. And what I love most is that our CEO reads through all of them. And then at the end gives her summary on, here's my take. I think there's some friction bubbling up here. We're going to talk about it, right? And just like a really nice way to stay in tune with the business and surface those issues. I'm curious to know, Pam, do you have any other tips adjacent to that or anything else, maybe similar to your example that sort of have been really instrumental in helping turning things around when it comes to managing leadership issues?
So we did do a survey when I first got here, which was it was the inaugural survey that we ever did. And we very openly shared where we were strong and where we had opportunities. Our strength actually was in the trust with your direct manager, which made me very happy, and the tools that you need to do your job. Where we had opportunities included communication and recognition. And there was a third bucket that we didn't call out. We decided to prove that we were going to take action, which was the third bucket. So rather than calling it out as an issue, we decided we're just going to take action, not call it out, but prove that we're going to take action. And every company update, the first thing we did was invite more people to the company update to increase communication. We added a newsletter. And we added team meetings and assets that people could take back to the gym with them so that even more people were in the loop. And we also, I think I mentioned the newsletter, and we added something called Crunchiversary, which is milestone anniversary recognition, different year-end recognition that you might get called out on throughout the year, but then there's a dinner in addition to how you were called out with either a financial reward or what have you. The point of all of this, though, is on every company update, we're talking about what we're doing with communication and recognition.
Got it. Super helpful. And what I love about the examples you're sharing is like some real follow through, and particularly like that example that you gave of, asking, what should I start doing, keep doing. When that person tried to get out of it, you were like, no, like, let's get something. I really want to double click on that because I think, I will often hear from HR professionals who are like, hey, I had this whole initiative, this proposal. I gave it to the team. I said, any issues? Everyone was like, no, it's fine. And then I went to do it. And then right on the day of or the day before, they were like, what are we doing? We can't do this. Give me a +1 if you've ever had that experience. Everybody was approved. Yeah, And then as soon as it's go time, it's like, no. And I think part of that is that the reality is HR priorities are not everyone's priorities, even though they should be. Like they're all at the end of the day business priorities. And so it is our job fundamentally to make sure that one, we're asking the right questions. It's not like, is there anything I could be doing better? It's what could I be doing better? Like, what is one thing that I do that annoys you, right? Like, just get it out there so that they feel more comfortable. And then two, to your point, Pam, helping people put their strategic thinking hats on. They're very busy. They just want this conversation to end. So they're going to tell you whatever it is to end this conversation in the moment, for better or worse. But for you to be like, well, here's a thing that I heard from someone else. Can you help me? Right? Like now it's a partnership. Like, can you help me? Like, I trust you and I respect your opinion and I would like your perspective here. So I just think you have really good follow through, Pam. Like you don't let it just go by.
Another tip I have is I'm working with a new team for me within Crunch right now. And although I've been here for 2 years, there just wasn't a lot of work to do with this team, and now there is. And one of the team members, fortunately for me, is on the Crunch Team Advisory Committee. So I have exposure and trust with one of the team members. And I definitely circle back with everyone, but very specifically, I ask him, how am I doing? Am I being collaborative enough? How am I being received?
Yeah.
Because I know he's going to tell me the truth. So find whoever the influencers are that aren't necessarily in the executive leadership roles. They might be a more junior influencer or middle of the pack influencer. Find your people that will tell you the truth because they are so important.
Oh, I love that. I think that's so critical. I think sometimes, especially if a professional has like so many of their initiatives, like they constantly get shut down and then they see everyone else's getting approved. Like I would love, and I recommend you all do it, just ask the question to whether it's your CEO or to a trusted person, like, help me understand, like, what is wrong with my proposals? Like, how could I build a more compelling case? What is different about my proposal versus their proposal? Like, just ask the question, learn from each other, build those partnerships. All right, Pam, I want to make sure that, oh, sorry, please go ahead.
I actually did ask the president of the company. I had to
Yes.
I had to present to the entire C-suite, and it was something it was about benefits, so it's emotional for everyone. And I actually asked him if I could practice with him, get his take, and then ask him, how do I make this the most impactful? And he shared with me something so helpful. I was so my perspective is people and culture, so I led with people and culture, and that is, our people are our most important asset. But for the audience that I was proposing to, he said, you buried the lead. Why not start with how this is going to impact our revenue? And
Yeah.
it was approved, by the way, first proposal in a group meeting, which is very unusual.
Oh, I love that so much. You know what? Let's dig in here. Let's dig in. I wanted to ask you about, okay, so what steps can HR professionals take to build better effectiveness across the leadership team? I think you started one right here, right? Like have those conversations, learn from each other, and don't be scared to get that feedback, right? What other recommendations would you have for anyone who's really trying to make their leadership team more effective?
So in order to bring about change, you also have the textbooks would tell you a guiding coalition. What that means is people at every level of the organization that can help socialize whatever it is, whatever change is coming. You have to work to get their buy-in. You have to be able to have the vision and share the vision to get their buy-in, build excitement and enthusiasm. If you personally don't have that skill set, maybe somebody on your team does. So you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. That's okay.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with people that have influence at every level in every department in the organization. And sometimes, so my example that I gave you earlier, where the person said, hey, you're getting ahead of me with the intern program, that was somebody that I found challenging at other times as well. And what ultimately won him over, and he was kind of like my Mount Everest,
Yeah.
was actually getting his team to trust me and getting his team to come to me for a lot of things. And eventually he kept hearing about the great work HR was doing. And he finally couldn't ignore it anymore.
That's amazing. I really what really resonates there as has resonated this entire discussion is just like that educational piece, that like leaning on each other piece, that let's be a cohesive, united team. Something that we recently started doing at Ethena that has just been wildly impactful in ways that I didn't originally imagine was we created a new headcount request slash approval process. And we made it really transparent. So every department head has to basically answer a series of questions. We keep it brief, like I think it's like 3 questions to advocate for their headcount approval. It's questions like, how will this role help us hit our revenue goals? What breaks if we don't hire this role? And like, yes, it's helpful because, we get to like vet out like, okay, that thing can break. It's not a priority. Like it's fine not to do that thing. Why were you doing it in the first place? But really what's been super helpful is that people, to your point with the example of like start with the impact to revenue or the bottom line, is that people are able to see, oh, that's how like a sales leader answers this question. And that's how a head of engineering answers that question. And we're all sort of learning from each other, these things that we could be doing better, but also these things that we do really well. And I think it's just helped level up the entire leadership team in this way that doesn't feel like an attack or political. And when somebody asks, like, hey, why didn't my headcount request get approved, but that one did, we can just sort of say like, go look at it. It's right there, and you tell us, but we saw a clear difference and here's why. So it's just like helped so that like the conversations are out in the open versus happening in silos, which I find tends to lead to more friction when people are talking about each other rather than to each other, if that makes sense.
I also think that for HR and people and culture teams, it's really important that we think and speak like owners or executives and think in terms of owning their piece of the business. And if you speak the financial language and also the language of whatever business you're in, you're going to be a lot more credible than just coming in and saying we have to be nice to our people.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I got to do it, so I always like to give like something actionable. One of the ways I did that in insurance, I actually got licensed as a property and casualty broker to see what everybody goes through when they get hired out of the internship program. And my crunch version of that was getting myself a personal trainer and working out 4 days a week in the gym, so that I could really learn the language of the business.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Can we, I'd love to get a couple more examples if you have them. Are there any other like processes like that or resources that you have found to help you better learn the business or just better partner with the leadership team?
Yes. So my best friends for the last 30 years have been finance. Find yourself a friend who understands analytics and finance. If you don't already understand how to read your P&L and speak the language of your business, then take the shortcut, which is making a good ally in finance that can kick the tires. So my CFO, my partner CFO at my last company, we would challenge each other and probably drive each other a little bit crazy. We had different personality styles too, but with a different personality style, you're either going to clash or you're going to make each other better. And where he made me better was I would come with the emotion of, I know we have to do this raise. You know, you're sitting, actually, he sat in another state. You're sitting in
Yeah.
another state managing by spreadsheet, and I know the people, and we need to do this. That was never going to get approved. It was never going to impress anyone, and it wasn't going to move HR forward.
Yeah.
So he taught me the language of being analytical, looking at the revenue, looking at the investment or future
Yeah.
potential, and putting it in context of all of the people and not just the one I was advocating for.
I really just, I like that so much. It really is all about, being more vulnerable, letting go of your ego and like leaning on others' expertise and inviting them to bring that in. I remember one time we did a leadership exercise and I was shocked at how much of an impact it had. We basically, there's two I'll share, but the one that I'm thinking about is we just asked everyone to anonymously, we were in a room, we were doing an offsite, and we asked everyone to anonymously go around the room and write like one thing that they really admired about that person. So we had the name of every leadership team member on a different piece of paper. And then at the end, they like read through it. And it was wild to see the emotional reactions because people like didn't realize that people admired this about them, or they kind of like had been having a really rough week and thinking that they were, you know, screwing things up and that they weren't meeting expectations. And it was just so invigorating, I think, and trust building to see that like, oh no, this whole team really does think and rightly so, sees my expertise and appreciates it. So I found that to be really helpful. And it just like reminds me, you know, the leadership team, they're just people too, right? Like they're just people and they have insecurities and they need a little bit of reassurance.
They
Um,
definitely do.
yeah, as well. One other one, in case anyone's curious, because I'm a big fan of leadership team activities, team building ones anyway. We had everyone go around the room and share one thing that they felt, or sorry, what they thought the hardest part of their job was. And it was like such a weight off people's shoulders to be able to talk about things that they normally didn't talk about because it felt to them like whining or nobody cared. And it just built a lot of empathy. It doesn't mean that we're not still going to have hard conversations, but it just means that we're able to approach conversations with more understanding, empathy, and then to your point, better framing as we lead into this. So, right, like I know you are very busy right now closing all these deals, and I totally get that. And so I'm happy to partner with you on the lowest lift possible version possible. And also, I still need to talk about this thing with you. It just like helped. I don't know, Pam, it looked like you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, no, it just resonated a lot because the first conversation I ever had with my personal trainer, he asked me that question, what's the hardest thing about your job? And he was really surprised by my answer, which was, shifting to serve different personalities.
Mm.
And I asked him, why are you so surprised that's the hardest thing? And he said, well, I know there are a lot of hard things in HR. I just wouldn't think that's the hardest thing, is one reason I'm surprised. And he said, and the other reason I'm surprised is because that would be my answer if you asked me the same question.
What? Okay, I wasn't even thinking about that. I love the commonality that could surface, and just like a point of identifying with each other a little bit more. Oh,
Absolutely. He has to match energies all day long and shift himself
yeah.
for the client. And I view all of the employees and executives as my clients, and I'm doing the same thing all day long.
That that is so great. That's well, I'm gonna be thinking about that for a little while. I wouldn't have thought that for really, I wouldn't have thought that for a personal trainer, but it makes sense. I wonder how much all of us are having to do that in our roles. Okay, last question before I shift it over to audience Q&A, Athena Spotlight, and a little poll. All right, so we have a bunch of people on this call who are hopefully really excited about everything that you've shared now. They're like, I want to implement this. And also, I imagine that there are some people on this call who are worried that I have all these ideas, but I don't think my leadership team is going to be open to me proposing these changes or wanting to partner with them more proactively. Like maybe they just want HR to stay on the sidelines. What advice would you give to an HR professional who wants to start supporting their leadership team more proactively, who sees problems and wants to address them, but is facing pushback?
So the practical advice that I would give is to build the trust, if not with the leader directly, find out who, and you can ask, who are the people that you can ask if you're starting a new role, or you can ask in a way when you're regrouping in a role, who are the people that are driving their business forward and who are mission critical to their P&L? It's a great question to ask. Make sure you're taking notes on the answer. And then you want to build relationships with all of them. And then if you have a big idea and the person in the C-suite is saying that would be a hard no. I've got that situation right now. So I'm working on all the people around that person to make sure that everyone can see how that would help us own a piece of crunch and grow as a business and solve certain problems. And then also, my other thought is to find a small pocket of the company where I can test it. And if I can come with results of like, well, we tested this in this pocket and here were the results. Either the results helped us lose less business, gain more business, gain retention of our team members that helped retain members, some good story that leads to the bottom line in the language of the business. That would be the way that I would attack that situation.
Oh, I love that so much. I have if anyone's curious, I have a list of HRBP questions that are very similar to what you're saying. And I'll go in and I'll be like, what are your top 3 priorities right now? What is the best people partnership you ever had and the worst one that you ever had? And like, how can we get there? Like I just like jump right in to make sure that they know, like, my goal is to help you. I think it goes such a long way towards helping build that trust and make sure that they understand that you are all trying to achieve the same goal. I will also throw out there something that that took me far too long in my career to start doing, but I have found is really, really helpful is I think for too long I looked at HR in a silo. And so I was sort of like, what are HR best practices? HR best practices are getting our engagement surveys scores up, and HR best practices are building stronger feedback. And I didn't necessarily always think, to your point, how does it tie back to the bottom line and how is it ultimately helping us hit our goals? And so now what I do, not always perfectly, but what I try to do is I start with the business goals. Like, what are we as a business trying to achieve? Let's say it's like a set ARR goal. Okay, I will go around to the leadership team and I will ask, what do you think is holding us back from hitting that goal? Like, if we miss it, why is that going to be? Like, what's the biggest blocker that you're going to have to, like, hurdle that you're going to have to overcome to do that? And obviously, there's stuff that I can't focus on because it's not within my realm. But oftentimes, there are meaningful people related issues that surface, such as, hey, I'm really running into cross-functional issues with this person on this team. Or like, do you know what the reality is? I don't think that team is holding their team accountable, and it has leading to impacts on my team because we are unable to meet deadlines. Or do you know what? Truthfully, I've been sitting on some feedback and I don't know how to give it, right? And so what I will then do is say, hey, I collected all the feedback that you gave me on your concerns about what might stop you from hitting our goals. And here are the people initiatives that I have created that are custom designed to help you hit the business goal. And I just find that there's no question about like, what's the business case? The business case is this is how we're going to hit our goals. It's just an easier discussion from there. But it looks like you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say that also give yourself grace if the timing isn't right for certain changes. So the thing I got a hard no on, I'm working on the other team members, but I'm also recognizing now isn't the right time to push this forward.
Sure.
I'm not giving up though. We're going to revisit it when it's more likely to be a yes.
Yeah.
And also on the stop, start, continue story, there was also one takeaway that was important, which was I realized with the 3 leaders that were all vying for the same role, one of them I could, for the current leader, so let's make it 4 people, the current leader, I could give him the answer and he would take it.
Yeah.
If he knew it was the right answer. For the 3 people that were vying for the role, one of them, I could give them 3 choices and they'd pick one of the choices. One of them, I would have to actually give a blank sheet of paper and it might not look how I wanted it to look. And I had to open myself up to a growth mindset that sometimes HR and people and culture need to, well, we should always be following the business. And sometimes sometimes the business leader also needs to be followed.
Okay, I love that so much because it reminds me of I started asking these questions when I started getting no's. And I think if I'm honest, like I started it from a place of like, how can I get my way? And I ended up in a place which was like, how can I better understand why this might not be the right choice now? Or if there's a deeper underlying issue, and say they'd be questions, they'd be like, let's say I get a no on an initiative, I would say like, okay, is this a no for right now or a no forever? And then I would say, okay, what would it take for this to become a yes for you? Like, what would it take for this to become a priority for you? Or it would be like, okay, why is this a no? Is it like a money thing? Is it a bandwidth thing? And if it was a money thing, I'd say, okay, well, how much money would I need to get the cost down to for you to say yes? And here's the thing, like sometimes it surfaced, they weren't giving honest answers. It actually wasn't money. This just isn't a priority. Okay, cool. So let's talk about why that isn't a priority. But sometimes it would literally be just misalignment. Like, oh, I didn't realize that like it wasn't going to cost that much money. Go ahead and do it, right? Or like, oh, I want to do this, but not this quarter, next quarter. Go ahead. It looks like you want to say something.
I was going to say mine is about HRIS, and I know that this will be better for the business ultimately. But once I understood the objection, I actually agree. It's not the right time. It's a huge distraction. Implementation takes a lot of resources. We're at an inflection point with our growth. The timing is just not correct. So sometimes you just have to, I'm going to go back to seek to understand.
I think that's so powerful because sometimes I don't think I hope that no one walks away with the message that like HR is always right. And so the goal of this webinar is to, learn how to force your leadership team to agree with you. It really is about building open, leading with curiosity and building open conversations so that the entire leadership team, and that includes you, HR, right? The entire leadership team can level up together.
I love that.
Okay, awesome. I do too. I think what an uplifting message from the two of us. All right, with that said I'm going to do a very quick Ethena spotlight and then we'll turn it over to your questions because it looks like we got quite a few. As I mentioned, Ethena is a compliance training company. And one of the things that we really love is offering flexibility to our customers. And so we have pre-built course tracks. We've got literally hundreds and hundreds of them. But what we do is we allow you to mix and match match them. So let's say you have harassment prevention training. What we sell you is a bundle of trainings, and you're then able to mix and match. Which topics do I want? Obviously, the legally required ones are not movable, but anything around that, you can say, you know what, I want to beef up this section of it, or I want to cut this section. I want it to be longer. I want it to be shorter. And so we do all of that for you. And then we integrate with your HRIS so that just one click of a button, it automatically assigns it based on federal and state law. So you will not have to manually determine, oh, who's a New York employee? And then wait, hang on a second, is this a California manager or a non-manager? You just click a button, boom, it auto assigns, and you don't even have to remember the cadence, right? So if you have Connecticut employees, it will only assign every 3 years because that's the minimum requirement. And we know that your leadership team does not want you to take up any more time than necessary for these trainings. I will also give you all a sneak peek at something that's coming up in our roadmap, which is we're also going to be offering test out functions anywhere where it's legally allowed. So basically what that means is you as an HR admin can decide, you know what, this training, unless this person fails this test and shows that they don't know the basic things I need them to know, I'm going to let them test out of the training. So you come up with your custom list of questions, maybe it's 3 or 5 questions, and if your employees can answer them correctly, correct, you don't need a refresh. But if you fail the test, I'm so sorry, you're going to have to take that training. And it's just a great way to make sure that you're keeping your employees up to date, but also being understanding of the very real business need, right? That sometimes there's a lack of time. And so to the extent that you can reduce the time spent on compliance training, the better. We have special promotions for all webinar attendees. So keep an eye out for an email follow-up from us where we will highlight those deals for you. Okay, with that said, for anyone who tuned in for SHRM or for HRCI certification or credit, here you go. And then we are going to put up a poll for you. I'm going to be quiet for about 10 seconds while you answer these questions, grab your codes. And then Pam, I'm going to start looking at the Q&A. I don't know if you have access to it as well, and start picking which ones we might ask.
Wonderful.
Okay, Pam, I have a spicy one for you, I think, which
Okay.
is, what advice do you have for working with a leadership team that is well-meaning? Okay, so they're not like obviously being jerks, right? They really mean the best, but they just consistently get it wrong, put their foot in their mouth, say the wrong thing. I'm thinking examples like somebody, says that they're not feeling well, and the leadership team member says, take as much time as you need. And then it's like, well, actually, you can't take as much time as you need. There are certain rules. Like, what advice do you have for someone who's struggling with this kind of team member?
So I think that, so first of all, I think for team members that are maybe, I've had managers that maybe are too empathetic and they're not giving the hard feedback. And then the person gets sick and all of a sudden they're giving the hard feedback. So they're getting it wrong because they're looking for the accountability in the wrong moment. And that's kind of one-on-one leadership coaching where I try to help them understand how they've made it harder for themselves, because then they're in a position. I'm not sure if that's what the question was. There could also be getting it wrong from maybe you have a very dominant leader who is constantly people aren't allowed to have time off. To be an executive in this company, you have to be on all the time and forget your family. And maybe you have like a leader that's strong in that way. And in that case, I did see in the comments earlier, somebody put DISC is a great tool. And even dominant people are misunderstood in some ways. Maybe they are blunt and direct, but they don't mean to come across in a certain way. And so DISC training could be a way of better understanding each other. If they're just getting it wrong and giving bad advice because they want to say take as much time as you need, that might be one-on-one coaching where you could say, what would it look like if everybody took as much time as they needed? So kind of the opposite of no one's allowed to take time off.
Yeah.
Take as much time as you need.
Oh, I love that. I'm really playing out the situation.
Exactly. And just make sure you do so in a really supportive way. I want to help you lead your team and get everything that you need. And I love that you're so supportive of your team, and like leaders like that, their teams tend to love them. And no doubt your team loves you and the feedback has been so strong. Just a question for you. What would you do if everybody needed to take as much time as they needed during the end of the month closeout? Which for fitness, that's a very important time period. And I would let them answer that question and think about that and hopefully come to their own conclusion.
I think that's really powerful just because oftentimes if you immediately just say no, the person doesn't feel heard and just feels dismissed, understandably. Whereas this, even if you come to the same outcome, which is probably no, at least they will feel confident that you really heard them out and considered it. Okay, we have one last question that one last minute question that came in. So let's see if we can sneak it in. How to work with management team when you are not at the same level as them. So let's say you're under a finance director and they're pushing ideas and that focus on the financial impact. So I think what I'm getting from this is like, let's say you don't report directly into HR and you're trying to push HR initiatives forward. How do you manage that?
I think that I would try to do so in as collaborative and partnership focused a way as possible. So again, I like to often lead with questions. So, thank you for bringing the finance perspective. Can I counter it? Is it okay if I counter it with the people perspective? Get permission from them before you bring the people perspective. That would be a way, because they're not going to say no. So, okay, sure. Yes, I want to hear the people perspective. Or would it be okay if I shared with you a balanced perspective or would it be okay with you if I asked you, what do you think the CEO perspective would be, balancing people and finance?
Oh, yeah. I really like that. I think the other place where my mind goes is, I do believe truly that at the end of the day, we all have the same end goal, or at least we should be. If you are a member of the leadership team, every single person's goal should be the success of the business. Like that's pretty much it, right? We all approach it from different perspectives because we all have valuable perspectives to share. If not, we'd just have, a leadership team full of CEOs or a leadership team full of, CROs, but we don't because we understand the value of different perspectives. And so I do believe that we fundamentally all have the same end business goal. And so I also would think about how, trying to understand what the finance leader is trying to achieve and how they think that is helping us hit our goals. And then framing your own position from, okay, here's how I think my perspective helps hit the business goals. How can we come to some form of compromise, or what is a way to marry the two? I just think bring it back to the big picture. It makes a big difference.
And I would also say, I heard a speaker say data is the new oil, meaning data is the commodity that everybody wants right now. And guess what we have in our HRIS? We have data.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
for example, if you're looking for more buy-in in working with HR on compensation, just as one example.
Yeah.
Guess who can look up what people in the same role are, and you don't want to give away anything confidential, but you can say the average, the median, the 75th percentile for a hiring manager hiring for a specific role. So instead of invite me to the table, you're coming at it from I have information that's going to help you make your case or get the compensation right, whichever is going to be the motivator.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh, Pam, this has been such a lovely conversation. I could go on for hours. I recognize that we are at time. So thank you so much for
Thank
everyone who
you.
tuned in. Thank you, Pam. Any final words of wisdom for the audience before we close out this call? All set? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you all. Okay, I will see you around next month. And Pam, thank you again. This was so helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciated being here and everyone in the audience.
All right, thanks all. Bye.